In a small village called Abonse, there lived a young woman named Essie. Essie was very beautiful. She had bright eyes, smooth dark skin, and a kind smile. Everyone in the village liked Essie because she was friendly and always greeted people with respect. Essie sold meat in the market every morning. She had a small wooden table under a big mango tree. On the table, she placed pieces of cooked meat in a clay bowl. The smell of the meat was so sweet and nice that people came from far villages to buy from her. Essie's meat is the sweetest in the whole land, the people would say. Even the old chief of the village, Nana Kofi, loved to buy her meat. He would send his servant every day to get some for him. But Essie had a secret. A big, dark secret. Nobody in the village knew where Essie got her meat from. The other women who sold meat bought goats, sheep, and bushmeat from the hunters. But Essie never went to the hunters or the animal sellers. Whenever someone asked her, "Essie, where do you get your meat from?" she would smile and say, "Oh, it's a family secret." The people in the village trusted Essie so much that they did not worry. But something strange began to happen. Children in the village started going missing. First, it was little Afia, a sweet girl who loved to dance by the river. Then it was Kojo, a boy who always fetched water for his grandmother. The parents cried and searched the whole village, but the children were never found. Essie would pretend to be sad, too. She would visit the crying mothers and say, "Oh, I pray they come back safely." But deep inside, Essie knew where the children had gone. At night, when the village slept, Essie would leave her small clay house and walk deep into the dark forest with a sharp knife in her hand. Nobody followed her because the forest was said to be full of spirits. There was a small hut deep inside the forest. That was where Essie did her secret work. One evening, when the moon was bright in the sky, a young boy named Ya saw Essie leaving her house. Ya was brave and very curious. He whispered to himself, "Where is Essie going at this time?" Ya followed Essie quietly, hiding behind trees and rocks. His heart beat fast, but he did not stop. When he reached the forest, he saw Essie enter the small hut. Ya waited behind a big tree. After a while, he heard a sound. It was a cry, like a child crying for help. Ya's eyes grew wide. He wanted to run, but he told himself, "I must find out what is happening." Ya moved closer to the hut, and what he saw made his heart jump. Ya moved closer to the small hut. The door was made of old sticks, and there was a little hole in the side. He bent down and looked through the hole. Inside the hut, there was a small fire burning in the middle of the floor. The fire made strange shadows on the walls. Hanging from a rope was a tiny bundle. It was a young child. The child was crying softly. Ya's heart started to beat very fast. He wanted to shout for help, but he was afraid Essie might hear him. Then Essie picked up her sharp knife and said in a low voice, "No one will know my secret. Tomorrow, the village will enjoy the sweetest meat again." Ya's hands began to shake. He took a small stone and threw it far into the forest. The stone made a loud crack sound. Essie turned quickly. "Who's there?" she shouted. Ya quickly hid behind a tree. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might jump out of his chest. Essie stepped outside the hut and looked around. The night was quiet, and the only sound was the hoot of an owl. "I must be hearing things," Essie said, then went back inside. Ya knew he could not leave the child there. He had to save the little one and tell the chief what he had seen. but how could he do it without Essie catching him? He thought and thought. Then an idea came to him. Yaw picked up a big stick and threw it again, this time far to the other side of the forest. The sound was louder this time. Essie jumped up with her knife. "I know someone is out there," she shouted and ran towards the sound. Yaw quickly rushed to the hut, untied the little child, and carried them out. "Shh, don't cry," Yaw whispered. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him through the dark forest, holding the small child close. Behind him, Essie heard something. She turned around and shouted, "Who's that? Stop there!" But Yaw didn't stop. He ran and ran until he reached the edge of the village. There, he met old Grandma Amma, who was carrying a basket of firewood. "Yaw, what are you doing out here at this time?" Grandma Amma asked. "Grandma, Essie is a bad woman," Yaw cried. "She was keeping this child in a hut in the forest." Grandma Amma's eyes grew big. "What?" Before Yaw could explain, they heard footsteps running towards them. It was Essie. Her eyes were wild, and her knife was in her hand. "Give me the child!" Essie screamed. But just then, a group of hunters returning from the forest appeared on the path. They saw Essie with the knife and the frightened child. "What is happening here?" one of the hunters asked. Yaw took a deep breath and shouted, "It's Essie! She has been taking the missing children! I followed her into the forest. She had this little child tied up in a hut. She wanted to harm the child." The hunters looked at each other in shock. Essie's face changed. She dropped her knife and tried to smile. "Oh, no, no! Don't listen to that boy," Essie said, laughing nervously. "He is lying. Maybe he wants to spoil my good name." But Grandma Amma stepped forward. "I believe the boy," she said. "Too many children have gone missing and no one knew where. Look, he even saved this poor child." The little child, still holding tightly to Yaw's neck, started to cry again and pointed at Essie. "See, bad lady," the child said softly. The hunters were angry now. One of them, called Kwame the Tall, stepped forward. "Essie, you must follow us to see Nana Kofi now," he said firmly. Essie's eyes darted left and right. She looked like she wanted to run, but there were too many people around her now. Yaw held the small child in his arms as they all walked together toward the chief's palace. The village people heard the noise and came out of their houses with lanterns and torches. "What is happening?" they asked. When they saw Essie in the middle of the group, many people gasped. "Essie? What has she done?" They reached the palace and the guards opened the gate. Chief Nana Kofi was sitting on his big chair. His golden staff shone in the firelight. "What is going on here at this hour?" Nana Kofi asked. Kwame the Tall spoke. "Chief, this boy, Yaw, followed Essie into the forest and found one of the missing children in her secret hut." The chief's face grew dark. He turned to Essie. "Is this true, Essie? You, the one we trusted?" Essie said nothing. She kept her eyes on the ground. Then Yaw stepped forward. "I saw her, Nana. She had a sharp knife. She wanted to hurt the child. There's a hut deep in the forest. We can show you." The chief stood up. "Guards, tie Essie's hands and bring her to the forest now. We must see this hut." The guards quickly tied Essie's hands with a rope. Essie looked up slowly and for the first time she spoke in a cold voice. "You think you can stop me? I'm not the only one." Everyone froze. "What do you mean?" Nana Kofi asked. Essie laughed, a long, strange laugh. "There are others," she whispered. "In this very village. You eat the meat, but you never ask where it comes from." A cold wind blew through the palace. The people looked at one another afraid. Who else could she be talking about? The people of Abonse village stood still. Essie's words hung in the air like a dark cloud. "There are others," she had said. Chief Nana Kofi's face was serious now. "Take us to the hut," he ordered. The hunters, the guards, Ya, and some brave villagers followed. Essie, with her hands tied, was made to walk in front. The moon was bright, and the forest was quiet. An owl hooted from a tree. They walked and walked until they reached the small hut. Just as Yaw had said, there was a small fire in the middle and ropes hanging from the ceiling. Nana Kofi stepped inside. "This is evil," he said sadly. The chief turned to the people. "Let this place be burned down. No child should ever suffer here again." The hunters quickly gathered dry leaves and sticks. They lit them, and soon the hut was burning. The fire rose high into the night sky, sending sparks into the darkness. The next morning, the whole village gathered in the palace yard. Nana Kofi sat on his big stool, and Essie was brought before him. "Essie," the chief said, "you have done a terrible thing to this village. You harmed innocent children and lied to the people who trusted you. You will be punished." Essie bowed her head and said nothing. Then Nana Kofi turned to the people. "Let this be a lesson to us all," he said. "We should not blindly trust people just because they smile at us. When bad things happen, we must be brave like Ya, who followed the truth even when he was afraid." The people clapped and cheered for Ya. The chief gave him a new pair of sandals, a bag of cowries, and made him a young village hero. The other missing children were still not found, but the people promised to be more careful, to look after one another, and to ask questions when something did not seem right. And as for Essie, she was sent far away from the village, never to return. From that day, the people of Abonse no longer ate meat from anyone unless they knew exactly where it came from. And the forest hut was never rebuilt again. Moral lesson: be brave and speak up when something feels wrong. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. Always ask questions and protect one another, for evil hides in silence.